The low hum of a Ferrari engine filled the air, a distant roar that seemed to mock the very scene unfolding before it. The luxury car dealership, a sprawling fortress of glass and marble, stood as a monument to wealth and power. But today, it would bear witness to something far more profound than mere opulence. Kofi, with his deep-set eyes and weathered skin, moved with a quiet confidence, the kind that only comes from a lifetime spent in a world of machines. His hands, strong and steady despite the years, caressed the wrecked Ferrari with a sense of reverence, as if it already felt the heartbeat of the car beneath his fingertips. It wasn't just a vehicle. It was a puzzle, a challenge, an opportunity. His reputation as a master mechanic preceded him. But this was different. This wasn't just about fixing a car. It was about reclaiming his pride. The crowd, which had gathered to witness Jaden's cruel spectacle, fell into an uneasy silence as Kofi continued his examination. Jaden, with his polished shoes and gleaming smile, had expected the old man to falter, to give in to the ridicule. Instead, Kofi seemed unfazed, his focus unwavering as he traced the cuts in the Ferrari's wiring, the subtle imprints left by sabotage. "Is this the part where you give up?" Jaden's voice was laced with mocking sweetness, but there was a crack of doubt underneath. The old man had caught his attention, and not in the way he had expected. Kofi didn't look up. His fingers moved across the engine like a pianist playing a familiar piece. Precise, rhythmic, purposeful. It was in moments like this that he felt alive, when the weight of the world's expectations didn't matter, and it was just him and the work. His mind raced with the knowledge of what lay beneath the surface of the car's mangled exterior. The sabotage was deliberate, hidden in plain sight, and it spoke to Kofi like an open book. He could see the lies etched into the metal, the deceit that had been carefully crafted to destroy what he had built. The crowd, initially amused by Jaden's taunts, began to grow restless. They sensed something had shifted, and Jaden, ever the showman, found himself unsure of how to regain control. Kofi wasn't reacting as expected. The old man wasn't playing along with the joke. Instead, he was proving something more powerful, the ability to remain unshaken in the face of humiliation. As Kofi slowly pulled away the outer casing of the engine, revealing the true extent of the damage, a soft gasp ran through the crowd. Jaden, still unsure what to make of the unfolding events, finally approached, his arrogance now tempered with uncertainty. "Are you really going to try to fix it?" he asked, though there was no humor in his voice now. There was only a flicker of doubt. "I've been fixing things like this for over 40 years, Kofi replied, his voice steady, yet carrying a weight of authority that could not be ignored. "You don't need to understand. Just know that I will." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with the promise of a challenge. For Jaden, the idea that Kofi, this old, unassuming man, could fix something that had been declared beyond repair was more than a professional affront. It was a personal blow to his ego, to everything he had built his life upon. The tension thickened as Kofi continued to work, his focus absolute. He didn't need the crowd's approval. Didn't care for Jaden's mockery. All he needed was the task at hand. The Ferrari was more than just a broken machine. It was a testament to his life's work. A life where he had been dismissed, overlooked, and underestimated because of his age, his background, and his skin. Now, here he was about to take down a man who had tried to use his wealth to belittle him. The air around them seemed to crackle with the quiet intensity of Kofi's movements. Jaden stood back, watching as the realization settled in. Kofi wasn't just fixing a car. He was reclaiming his dignity, piece by piece, repair by repair. Every motion, every adjustment, was a defiant statement against the world that had tried to write him off. The silence stretched on, with only the sound of Kofi's hands working, a rhythmic dance between man and machine. As the minutes passed, the crowd grew more restless, uncertain of what they were witnessing. Jaden, who had once felt invincible, now felt the weight of his actions pressing down on him. He had underestimated the power of a man who had spent his life perfecting his craft, a man who had nothing to prove to anyone, yet had everything to prove to himself. "You see," Kofi said, breaking the silence as he carefully adjusted a final piece of the Ferrari's engine. "This car, this engine, is mine. I designed it, I built it, and now I'm fixing it. You thought it was beyond repair. You were wrong." The crowd held its breath as Kofi stood up, wiping his hands on a rag. He stepped back, inspecting his work with a critical eye, and then turned to face Jaden, who had gone pale. "You have no idea who you've been messing with," Kofi continued, his voice low but powerful. "But you will." Jaden stood frozen, his eyes fixed on the Ferrari. The engine purred with life of its own, a mechanical heartbeat that echoed the sudden shift in power. Everything Adewale had said, every word, every movement, had stripped away the layers of arrogance Jaden had carefully built around himself. The realization hit him like a sharp, sudden blow. He was no longer in control. Adewale, this quiet, unassuming man, had outplayed him at every turn. The crowd, once amused by Jaden's taunts and confident in his wealth and power, now stood in stunned silence. What had started as a spectacle of humiliation for Adewale had turned into a public humiliation for Jaden. The tables had completely turned, and the weight of that truth hung in the air like the dense silence before a storm. Adewale stepped back in the car, his hands clean but his expression resolute. He wiped a drop of sweat from his brow, the heat of the day clinging to his skin, but his mind was clear. He had done what no one else believed he could do, not just fix the car, but expose the true nature of the man who thought he could buy his way through life. Jaden stood there, his mask of wealth and influence crumbling as quickly as the facade of his empire. Jaden swallowed hard, his throat dry, and for a brief moment he looked around, desperate for a way out. His mind raced. His empire was built on appearances, on manipulation, and now it seemed like everything he had was slipping through his fingers. His carefully crafted image was no longer enough to shield him from the truth. The man he had humiliated was far more than just a mechanic. Adewale was a man of integrity, and that alone made him powerful in ways Jaden could never hope to be. "You really thought you could get away with this?" Adewale's voice cut through the tension, smooth and unwavering. Jaden flinched slightly at the words. There was no anger in Adewale's voice, only quiet, control power. He wasn't just fixing a car, he was fixing the wrongs that had been done to him, and now, to Jaden. The air was thick with the weight of Adewale's calm, but Jaden could feel the impending storm closing in on him. His empire had been built on manipulation, on using people as pawns, but now he was standing before a man who had nothing to prove and everything to lose. It was a power Jaden could never buy. "I told you," Adewale continued, his eyes steady. "I've worked with Ferrari. I built this car. And you thought you could destroy it, destroy me with your money and your lies." Jaden opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. The powerlessness he felt was overwhelming. He could no longer hide behind his wealth. He had underestimated the strength of the man standing before him, a man who didn't need the world to admire him, a man who didn't need anyone's validation. Adewale had done what Jaden could not. He had earned his respect through hard work and integrity, not through manipulation or force. "I don't need to prove anything to you," Adewale said, his voice low and final. "But you've already shown everyone exactly who you are." The finality in his tone made Jaden's legs feel weak. He had gambled everything on his reputation, on the idea that money could shield him from the consequences of his actions. But now, the world was seeing him for what he truly was, a fraud. Adewale turned to the crowd, his gaze sweeping over them. He didn't need to say anything more. His actions had already spoken louder than words ever could. The crowd, who had once laughed at him, now stood in awe. They had seen his skill, his quiet strength, and his ability to expose the truth when others tried to hide it. As Adewale glanced back at Jaden, a sense of calm settled over him. He had proven his point, not just to Jaden, but to everyone who had ever underestimated him. The old man with the weathered hands had won not through force, but through sheer will and determination. Mr. Nwosu, Adewale said one last time, his voice carrying the weight of a man who had just reclaimed his dignity. This is over. The crowd began to murmur, and Jaden knew it was true. The lies he had spun were unraveling in real time, and nothing he could say would change that. He had been exposed, and his empire, built on the backs of others, on manipulation and deceit, was crumbling before him. Jasmine, standing quietly by her grandfather's side, finally stepped forward. The pride she felt in her heart swelled as she watched Adewale face down a man who had once sought to belittle him. Her grandfather had done more than just repair a Ferrari. He had repaired something far more important, his place in the world. "I think it's time we go," Adewale said, his eyes softening as he glanced at his granddaughter. She smiled, understanding the weight of the moment. With a final glance at Jaden, who was now a broken man, Adewale turned and walked away, his step steady, his head held high. Jasmine followed close behind, the sound of their footsteps echoing in the silence of the lot. As they walked away from the scene, the crowd that had once jeered began to disperse, whispers filling the air, but there was a sense of awe now. They had witnessed something more than a man fixing a car. They had witnessed the power of integrity, of truth, and of a man who had the courage to stand tall in the face of ridicule and emerge victorious. And as the Ferrari's engine purred to life once more, it was clear to all who had witnessed the scene that Adewale wasn't just fixing a machine. He was dismantling a system built on lies, greed, and power, and in its place, he was creating something far stronger, a legacy of dignity, honesty, and resilience. The low hum of Ferrari engine filled the air, a distant roar that seemed to mock the very scene unfolding before it. The luxury car dealership, a sprawling fortress of glass and marble, stood as a monument to wealth and power, but today it would bear witness to something far more profound than mere opulence. Kofi, a man in his early 70s with the broad, weathered shoulders of labor who'd spent his life working with his hands, stood near the edge of a vast dealership lot. His old truck, a reliable but faded relic, sputtered to a halt in front of the shiny showroom, and as if orchestrated by fate, Kofi's arrival caught the attention of Jaden Roberts, a millionaire real estate mogul with a penchant for theatrics. Jaden, dressed in an immaculate suit and designer shoes, was quick to seize a moment, turning Kofi's moment of misfortune into a public spectacle. The car in question, a Ferrari once a symbol of power and prestige, now sat abandoned, its vibrant red paint chipped and its engine a mockery of the opulence it had once embodied. Jaden couldn't resist taking a jab at Kofi. "You fix cars, right?" Jaden sneered, his voice laced with sarcasm, while a crowd around them laughed and filmed, hungry for their moment of entertainment. But Kofi was unmoved. The world had underestimated him before. This time, he would prove them all wrong. The crowd laughed, but Kofi didn't flinch. His hands, steady despite the ridicule, moved over the wrecked Ferrari like a master at work, each gesture a testament to a lifetime of expertise. He didn't need to respond to their mockery. He would speak through action. As Kofi began to dismantle the Ferrari, his fingers tracing the components with the precision of a craftsman, the crowd's energy shifted. The mockery began to fade, replaced by a quiet sense of intrigue. What was this old man doing that no one else could? The sunlight cast long shadows over the lot, the late afternoon glow bathing Kofi in a golden light as he worked. His movements were fluid, practiced, and deliberate. The crowd, once mocking, now stood captivated. No one expected what was happening in front of them. Kofi, an elderly man with worn hands and a humble past, was fixing a Ferrari, a car deemed beyond repair by experts. In the distance, Jaden watched, his amusement slowly turning into something more uncertain. Kofi wasn't just a man in his 70s fiddling with a broken car. He was reclaiming his dignity, piece by piece. "You're wasting your time, old man," someone called out from the crowd, but Kofi didn't listen. He could feel the sabotage in the engine. Someone had intentionally damaged it, making it seem as though it was irreparable. He knew better. His hands moved with quiet confidence, drawing on decades of knowledge. Kofi had designed engines like this one, worked with Ferrari's finest machines, and now, in this moment, he was dismantling the mockery that had been made of him. "Let's see if you really know what you're doing," Jaden called, his voice dripping with condescension. But Kofi remained silent. The crowd's earlier laughter had faded into an uncomfortable murmur. They could see now that Kofi wasn't just trying to fix the car. He was proving something far deeper. His skill was undeniable. His silence spoke louder than words ever could. "Grandpa!" Jasmine, Kofi's granddaughter, emerged from the crowd, her face pale as she took in the scene. She had been working at the dealership for 2 years and knew exactly how Jaden operated. This wasn't just about fixing a car. This was Kofi's moment to show Jaden and the world what true strength looked like. "Do you need help?" Jasmine asked, her voice barely a whisper as she approached her grandfather. Jaden, sensing his control slipping, stepped forward, trying to salvage the situation. "Ah, your employee? He thinks he can fix it?" "What a joke," he sneered, but Kofi's focus never wavered. "You've underestimated me," Kofi said quietly, his voice low but powerful. "But I'll show you." The crowd fell silent as Kofi began to reveal the sabotage. The wires deliberately cut, the brakes manually manipulated, the engine compromised in ways only someone with intimate knowledge of its design could have done. His hands moved deftly as he pointed out each flaw, each mark that told the story of the car's destruction. "You're a fraud, Jaden Roberts," Kofi said, finally looking up. "You thought this car was beyond repair, didn't you? You thought it was gone, just like you thought I was." The words landed like a blow, and Jaden staggered back, his face going pale. The crowd watched in stunned silence, the realization of Kofi's expertise settling in. He wasn't just fixing a car. He was exposing Jaden for what he truly was. "I designed this engine," Kofi continued, his eyes steady as he held up the damaged component. "You thought you could destroy it, destroy me, but you don't know who you're messing with." As the weight of the truth hung in the air, Jaden's massive arrogance cracked. He opened his mouth to protest, but the words wouldn't come. He knew it was over. Kofi had already won, not just in fixing the car, but in exposing the truth. "You can't prove any of this," Jaden blurted, his voice shaky, but even he could hear the desperation in his tone. Kofi smiled softly, his hands now clean. "Actually, I can," he said, pulling out his phone. He showed the crowd photos of the sabotage, detailed images of the engine's destruction, evidence that Jaden had orchestrated the entire thing. The truth spread like wildfire, the crowd's murmurs growing louder, more supportive of Kofi. Jaden, for all his wealth, couldn't fight the truth. His empire, built on lies and deceit, was crumbling before him. "I've already contacted the authorities and the insurance company," Kofi said, his voice calm but firm. "Your fraudulent claim, Jaden, it's been flagged." The panic in Jaden's eyes was unmistakable. He could feel his grip on his empire slipping away, the lies he had told finally catching up with him. He had underestimated the power of a man who had nothing to prove. As Kofi stood there, the weight of the moment settled over him. Jaden was no longer the confident millionaire he had been just an hour ago. His empire, his facade of wealth and influence, had unraveled in front of everyone. Stripped bare by a man who had nothing but his skill, dignity, and years' experience. The crowd had gone silent, some in awe, others in disbelief, as the truth continued to echo in the dealership lot. Kofi turned away from the now deflated Jaden, his gaze falling to Jasmine, who stood at his side, pride radiating from her like a quiet flame. He had done more than just fix a car today. He had proven that true power wasn't the flashy displays of wealth or the ability to manipulate those around you. It was in the quiet strength of a man who had worked tirelessly, learned his craft, and, when it mattered most, stood up for what was right. The Ferrari's engine purred with renewed life, its powerful hum symbolizing more than just mechanical repair. It was a victory of truth, a triumph of integrity over deception. As Kofi and Jasmine walked away from the scene, their steps synchronized. The whispers in the crowd began to fade, but their message lingered. Jaden stood alone, his empire now in tatters, the weight of his deceit heavy on his shoulders. His arrogance, once a shield, now seemed like nothing more than a brittle shell that had cracked under the pressure of one man's quiet resilience. The crowd, once so eager to see Kofi humiliated, now turned their attention elsewhere. They had witnessed the unmasking of fraud, the unveiling of a man who had been built on lies. And in that moment, Kofi had reclaimed not just a Ferrari, but his dignity and his future. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Kofi and Jasmine left the dealership lot, their heads held high. The world had seen the strength of a man who had fought through adversity, and in doing so, had turned the tide in his favor. The roar of the Ferrari's engine echoed in the distance, a reminder of the quiet power that could not be broken, one that was built on integrity, wisdom, and an unshakable belief in one's ability to overcome. And as the night settled over the dealership, the story of Kofi and his triumph would live on, not just in the memory of those who witnessed it, but in the hearts of those who believed, like him, that true power came not from what you owned, but from what you could create and what you were willing to fight for.